crafters! Today I'm going to be walking you through how to make these really beautiful paper leaves. I have a couple of techniques to show you and a couple different ways to do it, so I can't wait to get started. First, I'm going to grab my craft mat. This is my Sizzix craft mat. It's a little messy, but that's what it's there for. I have a little bit of watercolor paper here. I'm just going to grab one piece out, that's all I need, and I have an older stamp from Photoplay where I'm just going to grab the leaves out of the stamp pack. There are other stamps in this set, and you could definitely do this with any other stamps that you have at home. I just was feeling more in the festive mood with Thanksgiving coming up. So I'm grabbing my Versamark here, and I'm just stamping this down onto my watercolor paper. You're not going to be able to see the Versamark when I stamp it down, but once I put my embossing powder on it, that's when you'll start to see a little bit of that stick to it. So you'll see here I'm applying some white embossing powder. This is actually from Brutus Monroe. It's really great embossing powder. And I'm just going to pour this off, the excess, back into the jar, and then you'll start to see that beautiful, the leaves. So now I'm just grabbing my heat tool, heating this up, nice and simple. You'll know when the embossing powder is set when it turns kind of shiny like that. So it'll turn from a powder into a really beautiful gloss or shine. And there's a ton of different embossing powders out there. So some have sparkle in them. This was just a matte, I believe, like a glossy white. And then here's an embossing powder I have from Ranger that I really like, is their gold. And I'm just pouring that on this half of my leaves. So I'm going to do half in a gold outline and then half in the white. And so now I'm doing the same exact process where I'm just heating this through, and you'll start to see how the powder turns into that really beautiful gold shine. I thought that the gold would be really pretty for autumn. I really like doing this technique with an autumn or kind of fall feel. So these look great. So this is my watercolor paper. I've also done some on some regular cardstock. And now I'm just going to show you another way, and I'm just going to use some Midnight ink from Catherine Pooler. The reason I'm using her Midnight ink is because it's permanent, so that when I put this is on regular cardstock, but I'm also going to do the same process on the watercolor paper. That way the black ink does not bleed. So here I go on the watercolor paper. Looks great. And then I'm just going to do one more. And then this way I just have a variety of leaves to choose from. You might as well, while you have your stamps out, just stamp as many as you like. And I'm going to start with my watercolor paper here. And this is kind of why I have my craft mat out. I have some purples, yellows, greens. I even have a little bit of brown, and I'm just spraying it with my spray bottle. And I love using my inks this way. It's such a really fun way to use your Catherine Pooler ink. So here you're going to see when I put the ink over the white, the embossing powder is going to resist that color, and actually you'll be able to see the white through once it dries. So you see that coming through, which is really beautiful. The gold is just the beautiful gold. It's going to also kind of resist that color, but the white really has that super fun technique where it's called emboss resist. I also have a full other blog post all about embossing, all the different ways you can use embossing. And if you've never played with embossing powder before, that's a great place to start. So here I'm just kind of going through and using different colors and trying to mix and match to find a really nice fall color. And then you can see on my blacks how it didn't bleed the black at all. So that's super nice. So I'm going to set this one aside to dry, and I'm going to do the same thing. I don't know if you noticed there's a little bit of glitter on my ink pad because my nieces were playing with it and she dumped glitter in it. It's super cute, but it really didn't, hurt it too at all. So anyway, it's just a cute little reminder of her. So now I'm just doing the same exact thing, but ink blending. So I'm using my ink blending brushes. I'm going through with all these different beautiful colors. You can see the white come through. This is also another way to do emboss resist, and just another way to make the leaves. So I'm just going through with the orange, and pay attention to your color wheel because you don't want to get too many browns in there. But it's just a really fun way to play. And now I have some mica spray, distress mica spray from Tim Holtz that I'm putting on that gives a really beautiful shimmer. I just love these colors. They're really pretty. I use them all the time for stuff like this, and it's really subtle too. So you can see the ink blending versus the watercolor is very pastel, very muted, and the ink blending is nice and dark. And so now I actually have coordinating die set for all these leaves. So I only have 3, because there's only 3 stamps that come in the set, but I'm going to go through and die cut all of them out so I'm able to show you guys. So I'm using a little bit of mint tape. This is from scrapbook.com. I'll have it linked below in my video. And it's a great low tack tape to use for die cutting or something like stenciling. So here are my leaves. How beautiful is that? I really like the watercolor, and the purple is really pretty as well. You could use something like washi tape if you have that at home to keep your dies in place. And look at the gold. This gold looks so beautiful with that watercolor. And I don't know which one at the end ends up being my favorite because they're all really beautiful and unique in their own way. So I also wanted to show you, I'm actually cutting one of these leaves out. I'm trying to stay in video here. Here we go. And I wanted to just show you what fussy cutting was, because if you don't have coordinate, maybe you have stamps that are leaves, but you don't have die cuts. So you can always do what I'm doing here and fussy cut, which just means basically the term is just like you're just trimming along the edge really close, really neat, which is kind of why it's called fussy, because you're being fussy about it, really particular. You want it to be really tight and on the edge there. But this is a great technique that crafters use all the time, and I think there's also people out there that prefer that to die cutting. So you could definitely do that. I wanted to show you that option. And then here it is in the black with that watercolor. I wasn't expecting to like the black as much, but it actually is a nice pop against the color. So here's my die cut one, and I wanted to show you right next to my fussy cut one, and you can hardly tell, right? So that's another way you can do this without die cuts. You don't need the die cuts. And then here I am showing you, this is the ink blended. So that's that versus the watercolor, which you kind of can't tell now that they're together, but you can. So here we see, once I have them all cut out, the ink blended are definitely darker than the pretty, beautiful watercolor, which are nice and pastel. We have all these beautiful leaves now that we can kind of play with and make a card with, or even a scrapbook layout would be really beautiful if you had some fall photos. And you can kind of tell, it was kind of to show like the difference between the darker and the lighter, but it's not too much that you can't use them together. So I also wanted to show you one more technique. I have a little bit of Simon Hurley solar paste. I also just did a blog post on all of his pastes and how to use them. So this technique is in there as well, but I'm just rubbing this on the purple part of my leaf, and it's gonna give like a really beautiful purple shimmer on my leaf when you tilt it. So it's a super cool effect. So I'll show you this other one I have that doesn't even have purple on it, and then when I tilt it, it just adds that really pretty shimmer. It's really cool. So that's just a couple of ways to make your own paper leaves. I hope you love this. I hope you try it yourself. And thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe.